So it's been a while, but Galaxias has finally given us another chapter. Well, 2 chapters. You see, a few months ago, we actually had another chapter, chapter 32.5, but it was 10 pages of pretty much just straight action, and I could not stretch that out for an actual review beyond maybe 3 to 5 minutes max if I really wanted to stretch things out. So I decided to wait and cover it until the next chapter released, which was right now at chapter 33. And we got a lot to talk about and discuss as the battle between Neraid and Antares just gets even more insane, and the strategy to potentially beat Antares, or at least stall out until we find Geo, is actually brilliant, and I can't wait to jump into that. Meanwhile, Schmidt has his own confrontation being set up with a character that really wants to get back at him. So I can't wait to jump into things. Before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And also, really quick, Galaxias Volume 1 is officially out in English, so if you want to own a copy of the manga, go and check it out. Your local bookstore, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, manga shop, whatever, go and pick it up. It would go a long way to support the main series. And try and see if you can get people you know or might be interested into the manga as well with the physical volume as a nice gateway. The more people that jump onto this series, the bigger the fandom will grow, and the more discussion we will have online for probably one of the most underrated and unknown new gens ever. But that introduction out of the way, let's jump right into the chapters with chapter 32.5, titled Go Big or Go Extinct Part 2. Cover images of Geo, which it's been a bit since we've seen her. But either way, this is basically the second half of chapter 32, so we're going to get the continuation of that chapter. We begin from last time with Antares staring down at Neraid, basically wiping away the blood as he's basically getting ready to fight even more, with Antares saying, "I must ask, after suffering such a decisive defeat, why have you come to offer me your borrowed time?" With Neraid saying that he's here to beat her and take back Geo. But all Antares does is smile, saying you are in the situation because you could not win before, as she slowly unsheathes her blade, as she says, then go ahead and try. I just love that the sound effect just trails off up until the moment where we get to the next page, revealing that Antares, before, again, a really nice sense of utilizing sound effects in motion, beats the actual sound of her drawing her blade and clinging it back into its scabbard, decapitates Neraid in a visceral panel, as it happens before he even gets a chance to react. As all Antares says is, "Do not presume you reckoned me fully last time." Basically saying that you did not comprehend the full extent of my power last time, don't underestimate me. But this gets her a bit concerned, saying that she thought perhaps he might have had some sort of plan as she starts to walk away. And right as she's about to walk away, Neraid, completely fine, appears directly behind her in that panel. It just looks absolutely ominous and intense. Like you feel like he has a spirit of vengeance about to enact, vengeance upon his foes. And Antares barely has the chance to react in time, as when she turns around, his fist is almost making contact, as a giant explosion occurs with dust, as now Neraid is the one on top of the scaffold, with Antares down on the ground, as she's wondering what's going on, as now she's the one who is bleeding. And this is probably the most damage Neraid has done to Antares, compared to their first fight, which is honestly really great, and it gets me excited to see what's going to happen next. But Antares is wondering what's going on, wondering how Neraid is alive. And in another quick instance, she speed blitzes him and decapitates him and dismembers his arms in the blink of an eye, seemingly killing Neraid once more. And as she turns around with really great perspective, it does appear that Neraid has been killed, saying his head and his arms have been completely cut off and that she felt the sword cut them. But as the panel transitions, Neraid appears just fine, and he immediately goes for another attack, with Antares still confused as to what is happening, as Neraid punches her away again, but which she barely blocks. The two regain their footing, with this chapter ending with Neraid staring towards her, saying the plan is working. Now, this one sequence where Neraid is just cut up and Antares is looking back. The way she is drawn and how the blood spatter goes from one panel to the next, it really feels like it is being made with the intention of being animated someday, because this feels like something that a great director can make into an epic moment if truly animated. Like, the way this is done, not too many mangaka just have animation in mind when it comes to their series, but Galaxias, this manga, really feels like it's being drawn with the intent of being animated someday, and the way these panels and effects are made, it feels like that with every single chapter. But this chapter does in fact end, seemingly that Neraid is being unharmed or is messing with Antares' perspective some way, somehow. But that's where chapter 32.5 ends, and we begin chapter 33 of Galaxias, titled Challenger's Morals. As the chapter begins, it's a flashback back in the sewer system where Schmidt and Neraid are trying to find their way around, with Schmidt saying that Neraid is going to be a diversion, and once he gets outside of this labyrinth and go into the maze, he has to draw as much security to him as possible and to be as over the top as he can. And while Neraid does that, Schmidt will go and find Geo and rescue her. And we get a funny interaction with Neraid just complaining about them literally trudging through a sewer and how Schmidt is just unaffected by it. But Neraid ends up asking that they're about to fight, so why is Schmidt making a stop down here of all places? With Schmidt saying, well, right now, Neraid's 100 years way too early to even beat Antares, and that is incredibly blunt. Even though Neraid is showing a good showcasing to a point, what's been going on last chapter confusing Antares is the main reason why he's been able to keep up at this moment. So Schmidt says right now they need to prepare with some collaborators, as Schmidt goes down to the ground and reveals a cage full of rats, saying that these things are going to be our collaborators. As apparently there's a mass spreading of rats in this region of the continent in general, and it's been a major problem for this section of the kingdom. And Neraid mentions that Geo actually mentioned this beforehand, mainly because also that rats can be kind of clever and can eat people's food. But Schmidt says they also spread filth and disease, so there are traps set up with them all over the place. But Neraid asks Schmidt what he means by collaborators when it comes to these trapped mice, as we all end up thinking, well, the same thing. What are mice going to do to help us beat Antares? Or at least hold her off? But Schmidt says it's going to be easier to show him as he pulls out the guard's gun that they just knocked out, and he shoots off his own left arm, and his arm plops to the ground to Neraid's shock. He goes to grab him, asking him what he's doing, but then he sees that he grabbed onto Schmidt's left arm, as it's perfectly fine. But when Neraid looks over, what's blown to pieces was the rat. And Schmidt ends up revealing that this is an aspect of his ability to rewrite the duty of an object. He's going to change all these rats into human organs, muscle, blood vessels, and nerves, and implant them within Neraid's body. This being said, as we get a close-up of the cage of rats, Schmidt goes on to say that basically they're spares. If your head or limbs get cut off, they'll instantly swap for a new one. That means fatal injuries won't be fatal, with Neraid actively describing them as a sacrifice. Now let's take a quick pause here to basically take the information from here and apply it to what happened in the previous chapter. Neraid kept getting decapitated and his limbs kept getting cut off, but instantly they get repaired. Through what we saw in this chapter, Schmidt is using his Mujina dragon powers to basically use rats that he somehow implanted within Neraid's body using his dragon abilities to have them basically take up the roles as his limbs, his bones, his blood vessels, everything. That way, the second they get cut off, the rat is what disappears and replaces Neraid's body so that he's effectively unharmed. Now, we knew from a couple of chapters ago that Schmidt's abilities can basically create and alter living organisms, as he did by replacing Neraid's arm and his blood and missing tissue when he lost in the fight against Antares in the previous arc. And he's also able to create very realistic illusions, as we saw as well. So this is another big manifestation of Schmidt's abilities that are honestly pretty damn overpowered if we really think about this, because he's effectively, as long as he has enough material implanted within Neraid, he can basically make him immortal for like infinite lives. Granted, we don't know how many rats that he used to implant into Neraid for this plan to seemingly start to work and to make Neraid practically invulnerable at this point and to give off the, well, confusing method of regeneration to someone like Antares. This is something that we need to have some harsh limitations on, but we also need to know how many lives effectively Neraid has left during this fight, because we can't just take an ambiguous number of rats as extra lives to replace his limbs and take the blows for Neraid without having a hard number. That way we can at least count down to when the fight needs to reach a pivotal point where Neraid can't afford to take any more blows anymore. Not only that, but this also helps reinforce that despite this being a rematch, Neraid cannot beat Antares. She is too far out of his league right now, even though Neraid is incredibly powerful. So there is a lot for us to really look forward to in terms of his own development and growth. But that whole thing out of the way, we go back to the chapter. Schmidt, after explaining this, ends up wanting to start and get the plan rolling, but Neraid has oppositions to, well, Schmidt treating other living things like that, but Schmidt's kind of annoyed at this, saying that Neraid has no real option to talk about this stuff considering his position, saying that Neraid has already lost once. And he's acting like saying, why are you starting to feel sorry for others this late into the game? Let's say you were to go off and die. I'm sure Geo wouldn't resent you. But what about the mayor waiting on that island? Geo's adoptive father, Hallie, who entrusted Neraid with her safety. So that is a big thing to kind of mention here. As Schmidt basically says, okay, you could say, I fought fair and square, but that was no good. Do you really think he would just take that bullshit as an excuse for you being dead and gone? Dead men can't talk. Your only choice is to survive. If you want to seize this chance, your only option is to ensure you can exist on this planet for even a second longer. I can give you that power. Unjust, immoral. That's the logic of gods. Those words are meaningless when faced with flesh and blood desire. Why did you come here? Was it just to die gallantly? What is it that you really want? I love this interaction, because this helps expand more on not only their dynamic, but Schmidt actively deconstructing Neraid's current viewpoint of the world and sense of morals. He's here to save Geo, his friend, no matter what. If he's worried about some type of like fair and square battle in morals to fight someone that's exponentially stronger than he is and he could die any moment, why not use these underhanded tactics to buy time and distract her while his friend gets saved? That is something that makes so much sense, and things that most shonen protagonists don't even have to really consider this early on in their runs. And Neraid, having to come to terms with the fact that he not only has to fulfill his promise, but to save Geo, he has to accept these things. Shown by Neraid just putting his hand into the rat cage and pulling out a bunch of rats with a serious look, basically saying, fine, let's get this over with, as Schmidt grins, seeing Neraid accept the proposal. Now, I don't think this will be a permanent change to Neraid's mindset, or at least a hard advancement into him being more of a morally great character. He's taking the only option he has right now. I do feel like we will see more of these challenges later on, but I think this could also be a way of showcasing Schmidt's influence on Neraid with Geo not around. Because remember, Neraid is practically a blank slate that's only been like awake with no memories for a couple of months at this point. So Schmidt right now being the only person he's constantly interacting with, his worldview and mannerisms could influence him in some way, without Geo there being a sort of counterbalance. I do think that's going to be the group dynamic going forward, even though Schmidt is more so leaning towards Neraid and Geo's point of view and sense of adventure based on their previous interactions, especially with Schmidt basically agreeing to help Neraid fight and rescue her. So I do feel like that'll be like tampered down a bit, especially with Geo being back in the group, but it's a nice way to showcase the different dynamics in ways characters act when specific group ups are made. I know I'm harping into this, but it's just a really nice way to utilize these things. But back to the chapter, we get more narration from Schmidt, saying, if you get hit, you'll just lose part of your body. The accompanying pain and damage won't go away. Each time she kills you, you'll feel what it's like to die. As we cut back to the battle, as Antares just completely and utterly eviscerates Neraid into multitudes of pieces. As Neraid just says, I'm at 100% now, as he maniacally looks towards Antares, saying, if you don't want to die, then come at me like you mean it. As we get more narration saying, an immortal challenger and an unstoppable force. Either could win without contradiction. So yeah, Antares is unstoppable. Neraid is practically immortal at this point. So that's gonna be an insane back and forth at this point. And I also like that despite Neraid basically getting cut to pieces and regenerating due to the extra lives he got by having the rats infused with him, he's still feeling each part of the pain. It won't be nullified, and he'll feel like how it's like to die, but instantly be back that very second, shortly after, ready to face Antares again. That is just crazy to think about. And I can't wait to see, if we do get an anime at some point, how this will be interpreted in terms of the actual animation. I know I keep harping on this, but this series would kill as an anime. But anyway, Antares ends up referring to Neraid like Frankenstein's monster. Hey, Frankenstein is an actual thing in this universe. That's cool to find out. But as she's staring down Neraid, as seriously as she looks with shadows over her, she ends up asking, where might the doctor be? And as we then get that question, we cut over to Schmidt walking through the building. As the last panel on the last page shows Schmidt walking as Kerner is staring down at him menacingly from the shadows like the spider dragon that she is. And that ends the chapter. I cannot wait for the next chapter to drop, because not only is Neraid vs. Antares getting absolutely bonkers right now, but Kerner versus Schmidt, their rematch is getting set up now, and I cannot wait to see that. The last time Schmidt managed to get away by tricking her by using explosives and disguising them as mushrooms, and also Schmidt getting into her head, being the whole mad scientist thing and all that. So I'm curious to see where this fight's going to go next. We're definitely going to see a more combative role with Kerner, having to force Schmidt into actually fighting, though he will have to rely on his illusions. And that makes me wonder, did Schmidt also end up doing the same thing to himself, like with Neraid? Perhaps not as much? Who knows? But I am looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. Oh, we also still have Yerk still interrogating, or in this case, just torturing Geo at this point, so time is of the essence. So we have to see what happens next. This arc just keeps getting better and better as we are hitting the real fights of this arc, and I cannot wait to see how things progress going forward. And I just want to see how this ends up ending, because my god, does this series never disappoint. And I'm incredibly excited to see what happens next. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this chapter and Schmidt's new extension on his ability and his plan with Neraid on in the fight with Antares. How do you think the fight against Kerner is going to go as well? And do you think they'll make it in time before Yerks does something horrible to Geo? Let me know in the comment section down below. And once more, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and hype up the video to boost it in the algorithm so that more and more people can check out this amazing manga series and help build up the fanbase. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time for whenever the next chapter drops, probably within a month at this point. Seriously, this series has to be like a monthly manga at this point. I would prefer that over having to wait months for a singular chapter. But hey, that's just me. This series' quality keeps maintaining its course and getting better and better, so I can't really complain at this point. But I hope you all have an awesome day. See you next time.